is the Bloody Disgusting Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking Princess Di on the Other Line. We're talking the Hitchcock Awards. And we're talking The Return of the Reese. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace. And we're talking the return of Belando Final Girls in the Urban Legend franchise.
Oh my goodness. It's like, I was trying to think of a good analogy, and I realized that, like, that white Wonder Bread is a good name for Alicia Witt, as well as now Miss Morrison.
So, okay, everyone, we're talking Urban Legends Final Cut, but I will say that I had seen the third film, Urban Legends Bloody Mary, about 10 years ago, and I remember it being, like, better than this one, and so I put it on just to be like, maybe it's not as bad. And I remember, it's not great. And Kate Mara is also a Blando final girl in that movie. So that is the connecting factor for all three of these films.
Basically, what we need to see is fewer boring white girls in the Urban Legends franchise.
Apparently so. It's so funny. So, Joe, just like with What Keeps You Alive hitting Netflix and everyone jumping onto that shit, this movie hit I want to say Shudder maybe last month, and everyone started watching it again. So this is yet another film where it's like, y'all, wait until we cover it.
We just seem very prescient. Like, oh, wow, okay, they knew this was coming, so they scheduled it. No, again, we're not that good.
Well, it's important to note that we're covering it because it is the film's 20th anniversary on September 22nd.
Right, yes, that we did plan.
So another anniversary for us. But before we get too much further into the conversation, I do want to introduce our very special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, she is the founder of the exceptional horror blog Real Queen of Horror. You can also find her writing at sites like Dread Central, iHorror, Wicked Horror, Black Girl Nerds, and of course Bloody Disgusting. She is also one of the co-hosts of Bloody Disgusting's brand spanking new horror podcast, The Bloody Disgusting Podcast, which breaks down the current trending news in the genre, gives a rundown of recent new releases on streaming and VOD. Oh, and she's also a filmmaker. Y'all, this girl is busy as fuck. Please welcome Zena Dixon.
Hi. I really love that intro. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, but also thank you for having an about page on your blog.
I mean, I feel like we didn't even touch on the fact that you're, like, a totally professional YouTuber as well.
Yeah.
I don't know about professional. You guys stop. No, don't. Just keep going.
I have seen those backgrounds, lady. They look profesh.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, like, I just have, like, a whole bunch of, like, filming equipment. And, like, earlier this year, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just start yelling in front of my camera like I used to do a couple of years ago, you know, because that really brought me joy just talking about horror movies. And you know, also just putting like the filming equipment to use. But thank you so much.
No, thank you for coming on. And I feel like I always say this whenever we have a guest, Joe, but because, okay, in case this is someone's first listen, whenever we invite guests, we typically send them a list of like the upcoming 3 months of films we have to cover and let them pick. Zena, Joe let me know that you, like, went to this one, like, immediately.
It was like a hotcake. I sent the list and immediately got this response like, Urban Legends, Urban Legends!
Well, and I asked, I was like, did she think it was the first one?
No.
You 100% selected this. So, Zena,
yes.
Why did you gravitate so forcefully to this film?
I really love this movie. I really do. And I feel like it's misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I feel that people really need to go in knowing that, you know, it's a slasher movie. I feel like it's through and through. It's just like an ultimate slasher movie. And I feel like as a fan, as a movie fan, as someone who did want to go to like film school once upon a time, I just gravitated towards it. Like even when I first watched it, I think I was like 13 and I was just so in love with it. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of the first one.
Okay. See, I have wondered if that's like the disconnect. Like, if you don't like the first one as much, you're maybe more apt to like this one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so let me throw this out there because I have never particularly cared for this movie, and my main gripe with it was because I always thought it was boring. I never thought it was quite as exciting, and I do love the first one. I think the first one is a really, really good, like, post-Scream 90s slasher.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember always being let down because this one was so much more tame. You didn't really have the rest of the cast in the first one. I mean, like, the 3 or 4 survivors. And that being said, I will say that I rewatched this movie last year and still didn't love it that much. On my rewatch, like, 2 days ago, I had a lot more fun with it than I have in years past. And I think it's a combination, and Joe, maybe you can attest to this. I think it's a combination of me doing research on the production, watching all those special features on the Blu-ray, and, like, listening to director/composer/editor John Ottman talk about the film. I feel like when you have all that insight, it for me at least, it affects my opinion of a film to where I'm kind of like, aw, they really tried with this. So I feel like I'm a little bit lighter on the film, which is why typically, I'm sorry, press people, when you send me press packets, I don't tend to read them because I don't want it to affect how I just take the film on its own. Whereas I feel like with this viewing of this film, I was kind of like cutting it more slack because of listening to everyone talk about making it. I don't know.
I think having a little bit of critical distance from a film can do wonders. Like, it's really hard to watch a film for the first time and just take it at face value because I don't feel like this film plays well the first time around. Like, you kind of have to sit with it, appreciate what it's doing, recognize that it has a bunch of flaws, and either accept them or reject them and be like, no, this isn't a film for me. I unfortunately fall into the latter camp a little bit. But I think partially it's because I just want this film to be a little more fun. I feel like it's taking itself a little seriously.
Oh, I don't.
Well, whether it's an unintentional comedy is up for discussion. I feel like we're going to have plenty to say about that. I think part of it is that the characters that I gravitate in this film are also the people who either die early or don't get as much screen time.
I can definitely see why, like, a lot of people, they're not big fans of it, but no offense.
No,
but
there's never offense
actually,
taken.
no,
Just have at
I don't want to go too deep into the first one because, everyone, we are covering that on Patreon for our audio commentary for September. But, Zena, could you maybe succinctly describe what it is about the first one that you aren't, if there is one specific thing, if it's not easy to discuss, you can pass, but just like maybe what puts this one slightly above for you?
I actually feel like this one is more entertaining. And I say that because I love the fact that, first off, they mention, like, Alfred Hitchcock, and then also, like, just the presentation of the whole movie. I love the fact that it does take place at a film school.
Mm-hmm.
And you have these students, like, they're inspiring, filmmakers. They're going after a prize, an award. And then on top of that, there is a lot of humor in it. So it clearly does not take itself very seriously. Even when I think about Sandra's character, I have no idea how she made it into that school. So with her acting. But then I guess it's just, I kind of like the mystery of it. I like the mystery of it, how it's kind of like a Scooby-Doo episode.
Yes.
But for me, with the first one, there was a character that who would really irk my nerves, and I couldn't with her. And that's, Natalie, the main girl.
Oh, yeah.
She was just so naggy. Like, and I always talk about this because it's exhausting because I was a child when I watched this movie, but this stuck with me when she was just, I guess somebody was asking her, like, hey, did you see who did this, to Daniel Harris' character? And she was like, no, this is what happened. At first, she sounded like a normal person, right? Mm-hmm. Then she was just getting all naggy, like, now. And it's just like, oh, my God, what is that voice that you're doing? Like, she was just always whining. I had no idea why certain characters liked her. I was really hoping that she died, but she didn't. And I'm sorry.
No, you're not alone, and we agree with you on that.
I think we named her the worst final girl when we did that on Patreon, didn't we? I think we talked the worst final girls, and we were like, it's Alicia Witt.
Yes. And whenever people talk about bad final girls, it usually comes down to Natalie from Urban Legend or Julie from I Know What You Did Last Summer. And here's my thing, because I have never cared for Alicia Witt as a performer. I never knew if it was her, if it was the way she was written or if it was her performance or a combination of both that makes her such a boring character.
Right.
I will say, and I'm going to only mention this once just because I've been doing it, but I've been doing a deep dive into John Waters films, and I just watched the movie Cecil B. Demented with Melanie Griffith and Stephen Dorff.
Right.
Alicia Witt is is in it, and she is fucking fantastic. This is a movie that came out 2 years after Urban Legend, and she has this part that is like a psychopath. And she's so good. And I'm watching this like last night, and I'm like, where was this? Where was this performance in Urban Legend?
Right.
But I think this is the difference, right? Like, the problem with some of these final girls, and maybe it is the way they're written, but maybe it's also the performances or both. I think they misinterpret the idea that if you're going to be the survivor, you have to be bland or just play it really straight. And I think there's a reason that people naturally gravitate to some of the more interesting final girls, like the Sidney Prescotts, like, you know, the Jamie Lee Curtises. Like,
well, there's an agency there, and I think that the difference, just a broad difference, is that Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode and Sydney, they like fight back and they're like, cool, we're going to do this. Whereas Julie James, at least in the first I Know What You Did Last Summer, Julie James and Natalie are like, but I'm really inconvenienced by this.
And when you add that layer that you were talking about, Zena, where she's not just kind of sad and mopey and a little bit pathetic, but like she's also really whiny and naggy, and you're just like, I can't with you.
But then on that note, with Jennifer Morrison's Amy in this film, I actually do think she's written better than Natalie, but I do think that Jennifer Morrison, who I like quite a bit, is still really boring.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of feel like she's kind of boring too.
Yeah, I won't lie. I don't like Jennifer Morrison. I think she's kind of a terrible actress.
And that might be the reason that you gave this movie 1.5 stars on Letterboxd.
I hate it when you call me out on Letterboxd.
I always... Do you use Letterboxd, Zena?
You know what? No, I have an account, and then I was going to like start, but then it's just like I find that I'm like really old school and I use like a notebook, but then it's just like, okay, what if I lose that notebook? You know, so I'm thinking about transitioning over. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
I get that. I think it's daunting at first, but yeah, whenever Joe is watching a movie, I always like refresh my Letterboxd page to be like, okay, what did he give it? And sometimes he like takes forever to upload his review, and I'm like, God damn it, Joe, be timely.
Sometimes I do it deliberately so that he can't call me out like he just did.
Oh my gosh.
This is how we fight like an old married couple.
But Zena, I am going to rewind though. I think that the film school setting, while the reason that I found this movie more entertaining on this watch is I kind of viewed it as like a soap opera. Like once the twin thing comes in, it's just like, oh, we're doing that. I do think if you think the movie is taking itself seriously, all of the film school stuff comes across as very pretentious. And I feel like, and again, this is after listening to John Ottman's really good commentary, by the way. He's very lively, and usually when it's just a director, they can kind of get static after a while. I felt like it was very aware of like, oh no, we're just doing this. Like, it's going to be funny. Because he was intentionally going for a quirky, wacky tone. But the big difference, that we haven't brought this up yet because this is Horror Queers, the first film was written by Silvio Orta, who was a gay man, whereas this film was co-written by Scott Derrickson, ! And Paul Harris Boardman, who are two straight men. And I think by this point they're only... Actually, this is one of their first films. Like they would go on to do like Hellraiser, Inferno, but then also like Exorcism of Emily Rose and Deliver Us from Evil. But I think that's the difference there, but they're also like, they're fresh out of film school when they're writing this film. And so this film feels like it's very much made for people who went to film school, which unfortunately isn't a large chunk of the population.
Wait, are you saying that this was like their thesis film?
Dude.
Were they competing in the Hitchcocks? Oh my god, do you think they won?
It's so ridiculous, right? Like, okay, the mere concept of if you win this award, you automatically have a shot in Hollywood, and if you don't get it, then you're doomed to teach.
Yes, like the whole movie comes down to the punchline, those who can't do teach. To which I say, fuck you, as somebody who works in academia.
You know, but that's what I mean. There were a lot of things like that was just like really over the top and a little bit ridiculous.
Yes.
Well, maybe not a little bit, but it was ridiculous. But
yeah.
I think that's why I like it, you know, because with the first one, I feel like the first one, it did feel very serious and stuff, you know, and I felt like this was a good follow-up. Like, I felt like it was a good, like, solid, original sequel. you know, and that's pretty much what I asked for. And don't get me wrong, like when the whole twin thing happened, even when I watched it as a preteen, I was just like, what? You know, I was really confused.
Oh, see, that's when on my rewatch last night, that's when I like busted out laughing, and I was like, all right, let's go movie!
I totally forgot about the twin thing. I don't know, maybe I'm not giving it enough credit because I do feel like in an inferior film, it would have been revealed that he doesn't actually have a twin and he's gone crazy and he's the murderer. So credit to this film for not actually pulling that switch.
True.
Yeah. Okay, so we're getting like into broad strokes here about the film. So let me just go into how this film came to be, and then we'll just jump in. So,
sure.
The first film obviously is a huge hit. It's made for a budget of $14 million, goes on to make about $72 million worldwide. The second unit director of that film is one Michael McDonald, and he because they were going to do like a sequel immediately. And that comes out in September, I think, of 98. This movie's filmed in the fall of 99. This guy, McDonald, like really, really wanted to direct this movie because he was like, I've been doing producing work and second unit directing. I'm owed my due.
Aww.
Enter John Ottman, who is really only known for being a composer, and he's also best buddies with, I don't know if I want to get too much into this, but, you know, kind of creepoid Bryan Singer. He worked with him on a lot of his early films, even co-directed their first short film together in 1988 called Lion's Den. So Ottman comes up with the premise of it being at a film school. And Phoenix Picks, who produced the film, is like, that's a good idea, you do it. And McDonald is interviewed on the Blu-ray, and he's kind of like, yeah, it was really kind of shitty, and then they still had me sit on his shoulder a lot during directing to make sure he was doing okay. Because this is John Ottman's first and only directorial effort as a filmmaker.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. But also, did they have the other guy sit in a smaller chair, like in the back of the room when they did the interview? Like, no, you're a bit second tier.
He's not like outright like bitchy about it, but you definitely get the vibe that it's like, this should have been my movie.
Did he end up going on to direct anything? Do you know?
Well, first of all, he was a producer on The Usual Suspects, so I think they all knew each other.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, no, unfortunately, McDonald has not gone on to direct anything, and actually his last producing credit was for the 2007 film King of California with Evan Rachel Wood and Michael Douglas.
Nope.
You laugh, but apparently it's actually really good.
Oh, okay. Good for him.
Yeah, so they bring in Ottman, and then of course they bring in like relative noobs, Boorman and Derrickson, to write the film. Ottman, again, like I said, wanted to go for a more wacky and tongue-in-cheek tone, and he didn't like gore, and he's very much adamant about this being more of a thriller than a horror film. And every time I heard that, I just cringed, because it's the same fucking thing, y'all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can call one a subset of the other, but it's basically all under a horror umbrella. Like, we're literally watching people get stalked and murdered in this movie. Horror film.
I think they're associating horror with gore. And what's interesting, though, is that, because they keep saying how the first one was more of a horror movie, and we're going to go more suspense thriller with this one. And I'm like, but the first one's also not that gory.
No.
It has more inventive kills, but I do think that this one's more playful. I do agree with Zena on that. But, like, I wouldn't say it's not a horror movie.
Right.
That's a stretch.
So, anyway, Ottman's like, he's like, you know, coming into film, is like, cool, I'm going to work in all these references. So, like, he's like, I'm going to make this, like, for the film buffs. And one of the producers on The Extras is like, yeah, but our audience isn't film buffs. And he keeps going, oh, it's okay, the film buffs are going to get it. So, like, the opening credits with the letters appearing is Alien, the steamy corridor is Alien, the plane is Twilight Zone, the movie, Jacinda Barrett getting a bag over her head in the coat closet is Black Christmas. Sandra's death is Peeping Tom. There's a Blair Witch thing with the woods that was cut down when Scary Movie came out. Oh, and the tower, which they're really proud of because they built it as Vertigo.
Lots of good stuff, but at the same time, if you don't get that, who fucking cares?
Well, and it's fun if you know it, but like it doesn't add anything to the film, in my opinion.
Yeah, because like you said at the beginning, in some ways it feels like it's trying too hard because it's so desperately shoehorning some of these things in. And I do think it makes sense because, as you said, Zena, like this is very much set at a film school. Like, we are constantly reminded of the fact. So it doesn't feel like it's out of place, but at the same time, it doesn't also feel like it's savvy enough to make it meta. It just kind of feels like, wouldn't it be cool if we inserted a bunch of film references in here? And you're like, sure. And?
So yeah, they filmed this in Toronto, just like the first movie, over a period of 47 days in the fall of 1999.
Okay, quick correction for the Canadians. This was shot in Peterborough.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wait, is that in Toronto?
No. It's like a different town. It's a couple hours away, but it's
Oh, crap. Okay, well, this film is shot in Peterborough.
at Trent University, because the first one was shot in Toronto at like a more prominent school.
No, I knew that. Well, fine. Okay, whatever.
I'm just saying the second one got downgraded to a worse school in Canada.
Well, the weird thing is, though, it had the same budget. It was still $14 million, but they can't stop talking about how low the budget was and the extra features.
No, guys, we only had $14 million. And everybody's like, yes, like the first one.
And, so they filmed this in the fall of 1999. It gets released in the fall of 2000. So it's like a year, whereas the first one finishes filming in July and is in theaters 2 months later in September. So I do think that the reason, though, is because we have Ottman pulling triple duty on this film. So I think he, filmed it, then he was like, cool, let's go edit. Cool, then I'll do the score.
Yeah, they may have also just been like, oh, we missed the Halloween window. Let's wait until next year.
No.
So yeah, this film comes out September 22nd, 2000. We've got a runtime of 97 minutes. It does open in the number 1 spot with $8.5 million. And that is the first film never made it to the number 1 spot.
There we go. Also, I love it when we do the movies that are like 20 years and older, because it's like, it took the number 1 spot with $8 million. You're just thinking, oh,
well, it's
wow.
also September, which is generally a slower, it's like you think at that Labor Day time weekend where it's like, okay, no one goes to the movies then.
Very true. Yeah.
But yeah, it ends up grossing $21.5 million domestically with $17 million internationally for a worldwide gross of $38 million. The worldwide gross of this film is equivalent to the domestic gross of the first film.
Yeah. And I'd say this is why we don't get a sequel, except we do.
Yeah.
But that one was direct-to-vid, right?
It was direct-to-video, directed by Pet Sematary and Pet Sematary 2's Mary Lambert, by the way.
Yeah, I wonder if that's like her in movie jail.
Yes, I think she's still paying for Pet Sematary 2, unfortunately.
Well, as we talked about during our Pet Sematary Patreon episode, I think she's found lots of good work in other avenues, but not in features and not on the big screen. Yeah.
So, okay, the critics hated this movie. We're looking at a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay. Come on. That is way harsh, Ty. Come on.
Okay, Mr. 1.5 out of 5.
I'm just saying, I also didn't review this film. I gave it a gentle starred rating on Letterboxd. It's not like I actually wrote a whole treatise on it.
Right. Well, no, and I think, and I mean, I don't know if y'all have seen this too, but I think with it hitting Shudder, I've seen a lot of people come to this movie's defense in the past month or two.
It's actually really encouraging. Zena, what did you rate this movie?
Honestly, I feel like I'll give it a 7 out of 10 because it's not bad. I just think that it's unbelievable how people will say how bad it is, but then not saying that these movies are bad, but it's I feel like it's in that same type of space as a Final Destination, as a Scream, yes, as a Scream, as I Know What You Did Last Summer, because I Know What You Did Last Summer, that movie is ridiculous, but people love it. So
I will agree with that statement. It is ridiculous. I do love it.
And I love it.
That. Yeah.
But that's what I mean. I feel like maybe people were still just holding on because, don't get me wrong, again, I do like the first one. It's just, Natalie. But I do like the first one.
I love that.
I think that it's fun, and I'm someone who loves slashers, but for some reason it's people just don't like this one, and I can see, again, there are silly elements, and there's even some scenes that kind of really irritate me, or they're really cringeworthy, but I still really enjoy it. But then again, I might be biased because I went in always loving the movie.
We don't apologize for liking movies here.
No.
We're two people that both adore. Well, I mean, Zombievers is a legitimately good movie, but we're two people that adore Zombievers, so it's fine.
Yeah. That is a great movie, though.
So yeah, critics 9%. We're looking at a Letterboxd score of 4.4 out of 10. Yeah, I mean that's about it. So let's see if we can do this movie justice, Joe.
All right. Feel free to interject at any point. So on a plane full of idiot college students, a horny couple sneak off to join the Mile High Club, and they find themselves the sole survivors of a massacre. Just as the killer enters the cockpit to dispatch the final girl...
Wait. You've skipped over so many things. But
You're going down.
This sequence is long, and I was like, it doesn't have any bearing, so I guess I'll just do it quickly. But yes, let's talk about it.
well, okay, I mean, basically, first of all, Joe, you'll be happy to know that do you know who is eating her pussy in the bathroom?
He looked familiar, but I can't say I do.
He's Yanni Gelman, aka Paolo from the Lizzie McGuire movie.
Oh
Oh my god!
Zena, this
I
is
didn't even know that. That was my childhood.
Do not encourage him, Zena.
We have a running gag on this show where I somehow find a way to connect any movie we cover to the Lizzie McGuire movie.
Okay, you know what? You keep doing this to me, so your penance now, Trace, is you have to make a t-shirt that we will sell in the T Public store that just says Paolo from the Lizzie McGuire movie.
Paolo and Isabella! No, but I do love that she can't seem to read. Like, she's like, you're going down.
Okay, but let's be honest. That's really just Sandra, right? Like, that's not her playing the role. That's Sandra's inability to read in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think this scene is fine. I think because they wanted to not do like an opening death like the first scene, like the first movie,
Mm-hmm.
and it does kind of immediately put you into this kind of goofy aspect of like, oh, it feels more meta, but I don't love it. It's fine. It's there. It's fine.
I thought it was pretty creative, because even when they were going with the couple, Sandra and Paolo, when they were going to...
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. But
No,
even
that's
when
great.
When they were going to the bathroom, and there's that older woman who's just staring off somewhere, you already know there's something wrong with her,
Mhm.
from the way that she's looking. But I didn't expect. I remember when I first watched the movie, I wasn't expecting them to be like shooting a scene with their
No.
movie, So I thought that was pretty clever.
I felt like my problem was that this is shot too much like the rest of the film, as opposed to a student directorial effort.
That's actually what bothers me though about any movie where this isn't the first time this has been done, right? Where we're watching something and then it's revealed that it's actually a film shoot.
Yeah.
The problem is we're seeing it from all these different camera angles, and I'm like, okay, but this is one take, so really we should just be seeing this from one angle.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, I think it works for this film because you're meant to think that this is a proper horror film,
Right.
and that this is a legitimate opening sequence. I will say, it got me thinking about how much I would like to see a slasher film on a plane, though. That seems like a very novel concept. And yes, I realize we have Red Eye. But
I was
it's not
going to
quite
say
the same.
Red Eye, Snakes on a Plane.
Oh, come on. We talked about that at length.
Everyone
sir.
in this scene was wearing leis, and so I was like, this is just like Snakes on a Plane, except 6 years earlier.
A little bit, yeah. So all this to say, we get this fun sequence, whether it works for you or not. This is actually a student film. So just as the plane is about to go down and this final girl is about to be killed by the killer, a gentleman throws himself onto the windshield and yells cut. And this is our asshole director Toby, played by Anson Mount.
And by the way, apparently, and so Ottman immediately brings up Bryan Singer in the commentary here, but he says, people think that Toby is modeled after my good friend Bryan Singer, who has a reputation for being a tyrant on set, but that's not true.
Yeah, no, he just diddles underage boys rapily.
Allegedly.
Sure.
No.
It's sad that Ottman would... Well, no, I guess this
This is
been...
2001.
Okay, in that case, it's a little more forgivable because obviously those allegations hadn't come
Oh,
out.
we didn't... I can't believe we didn't mention this, but yeah, so I said the first film had a gay writer. John Ottman is gay, so the director, editor, composer of this film is a gay man.
Well, that maybe explains why he thought it was going to be a little bit wackier and a little bit more fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes to show the difference. I mean, obviously, it's not like all gay men do things the same, but it's like, you can see in Orta's script, like especially in Brenda's climax, her big hair scene, like that feels especially written by a gay man. And this film is directed but not written by a gay man. So you have a gay man. The first one, you have a straight man, presumably, directing a gay man's script, whereas in this one, you have a gay man directing two straight men's script. So I think that's an interesting comparison.
But I think also, it was Ottman who elevated Eva Mendes' character Vanessa to like a more prominent role, right?
Yep.
And I think it's interesting that it was like, hey, this lesbian character is really popping. Let's give her a larger role in this film.
I agree.
So we kind of pull back from this airplane set and we get to, we're more or less introduced to everybody that's going to be important. So we've got Sandra, who is the actress played by Jessica Caulfield.
I love her. I mean, big Legally Blonde fan here, but...
I mean, to me, part of the reason that I struggle with the middle section of this film is because I think Sandra is so much fun, and she's more or less, well, she's not the first death. She was the first death, but she's gone too early, in my opinion. And it evokes a lot of Valentine sympathies for me.
I agree with you. I thought that her character should have been around a lot longer. You know, but I think that, to be honest with you, maybe they were probably just annoyed with her character and they didn't know what else to do. I mean, but I think that, you know, we need those kind of characters in these, you know, types of movies.
We do.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, she's the quote-unquote dumb blonde, maybe the slutty one, and so she's quote-unquote supposed to die first. I do love, and this is your useless IMDb trivia here, but in both this movie and Valentine, her character's absence goes unnoticed because in both movies, her character was supposed to have gone to LA after her death.
Oh, right.
Maybe it's the same universe and she's actually a twin. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's make that movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so we also have, yes, Boom Mic Operator Vanessa. We have entitled Rich Dude Graham, who I legit could not figure out what his role is on any of these film shoots. He just always talks about his dad's money.
Is this Joey Lawrence's character?
It is!
Yeah,
Whoa!
Okay. So, I don't know about y'all, but I sometimes get, like, face blindness, and I think the first time I saw this, I thought that Matthew Davis and Joey Lawrence were the same character. And so
fair,
when they added the twin in, I was especially confused on my first viewing.
Oh my god, triplets!
I was really confused as to why his lips were always glossy. And I know that he's supposed to be like that cool guy, but I don't know. And then on top of that, it's like didn't he have a crush on Amy? And I didn't understand why.
100%. It feels like a dropped storyline too.
And granted, so there are 8 deleted scenes for this movie. All of them are from the first act, and there was a lot of extra character work brought in, but Ottman was like, oh, we gotta cut it to, like, pick up the pace.
Right.
So I watched them to be like, well, I kind of would have liked to see more from these characters. Ooh, they were cut for a reason, y'all.
Oh, were they bad?
Oh, no.
I mean, they're just boring. Like, I mean, there's more interactions and you get to spend time with the characters, but, like, it's not important and it's not particularly entertaining.
Right. Okay, well, good. They made the right call then.
Yeah.
Okay, we also have 2 FX guys. Stan, who is played by Anthony Anderson. I did not realize how much of an MVP he was in slasher films.
Yeah.
Just gonna say, like, he really did kind of turn up in a bunch of them, and I felt like I never recognized that fact.
Do we like him? Because he's obviously comedic relief. Him and
Dirk, yes, played by Michael Bacall.
I feel like it's always... I feel like you're token... Because that's what he is, right? He's like the token black character in this movie.
He's the token black guy, and then we've got... Dirk is kind of a dweeb or like a geek, but also... very ill-defined. Like, you almost feel like they could just have one of them and it would have been fine.
This is another one, though, where I remember being annoyed by Anthony Anderson on a previous viewing, yet on my rewatch this week, I was like, you know what? He is kind of funny.
I like the 2 of them and their interactions with Sandra, because I think that there's a decent amount of comedy. Like, it's sexist, of course, because they treat her like she's a dumb slut. But I like that it also winds up feeling genuine. Like the moment where they pull the prank on Amy, our final girl, where they pulled a prank on her, they have such a camaraderie that I was like, oh, I actually buy that these people know and like each other.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that, you know, with Anthony Anderson's character, with Stan and Dirk, I think that they were supposed to be those 2 funny guys, but I kind of feel like maybe there could have been just one of them.
Yeah.
Because
yes,
even with Dirk, you really don't hear too much from him. Like, he really doesn't have like a lot of lines, or, I mean, maybe he's just supposed to be kind of like that horror guy who knows everything. And, you know, because he was commenting on the blood, but him and Anthony, him and Stan, they were doing the same thing. So I was just a little bit confused with his character.
You know what? No, that's a really good point, though. And I would understand making it 2 people if they each got separate death set pieces. But because they both die in the same scene in the exact same way, it really is it begs the question, like, why are these 2 people?
Unless it's meant to be like, oh, these 2 are so interchangeable, like... it's almost like they are twins of each other. Like, they go everywhere together. You never see them apart. They seem to finish each other's lines. It's like, oh, it only makes sense that they would die together then, too.
Yeah.
I don't like it, per se, but I wonder if that's the rationale.
Are you assigning a queer reading to them?
No. Because I don't think there's anything to these, so you can't even... I mean, they're empty buckets. You could fill them with anything, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so more or less that's the opening scene, and then we transition to the next day. We're in a lecture hall, because of course, and Amy, feel free to challenge me on this, but I feel like she's giving fuck eyes to Professor Solomon, played by Hart Bochner.
No, I didn't. I was kind of getting that she was feeling lost, like because it's kind of like, spoiler. No, that's what we're doing, but
yeah.
It's kind of like with her dad and him being so successful, and then it's just kind of like, I think that maybe she just felt like she had to be there, trying to follow like the family line. I really don't think that she even actually wanted to be a filmmaker. And my thing is, why are you trying to go so hard on winning this award when your dad can pay for it? Like, not in a mean way, but it's just do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, think about it. Would you go to school and fight against people who don't have the funds to do it, or would you just have your family pay for it?
No, I agree with you. And actually, I'm going to cut to the end really quick. Does she win the award, or does Travis posthumously win the award?
We don't know, because it's all part of her film.
Right.
And so I'm just sitting here like, why the fuck is she doing this?
I mean, let's just lay the cards on the table. She is an entitled white lady bitch.
Well,
I mean, she's entitled.
Joe, that was so harsh.
I don't think she's. I think she. While I do think that Morrison is pretty bland in the role, I actually do like the character, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I don't think she's a bitch. I actually might have preferred it. I might have preferred it if she was a bitch. Like, if she had like Vanessa's feistiness, like that would have maybe been better for me.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that she's way too docile. Like, I definitely laughed when you said that she looks like confused or out of it, Zena.
Oh, it's amazing.
But I kind of feel like that's actually what Morrison is bringing to this role. Like, she plays Amy like she is constantly just a little confused and maybe lost.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't help that she constantly has to get picked up by Reese. Like, does this girl even know her way around the campus?
Oh, we're going to get to Reese in a minute, because...
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll press on, because we're getting there. Okay, so Professor Solomon is Amy's thesis advisor, but he's also, doing this intro thing, whatever. That's fine.
Wait, what do y'all know Hart Bochner from? Because you say his name like he should be a known thing. I know him from one thing and one thing only.
Oh, I don't
What's
know
that?
him.
He is the cokehead in Die Hard who, like, tries to, like, smooth everything over, and he goes in to talk to Alan Rickman, and he's like, man, I gotcha, man. We're going to smooth this all out, and then get shot in the face.
Oh my
wow.
gosh.
Okay.
Yeah. He plays a smarmy jerk in that movie, too.
Well, I remember seeing him, he was in Terror Train.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So, but I don't really, I can't really think of anything right now, what else he was in.
No, but people will always be like, because I showed this to a friend when I watched it last year, and he was like, oh my god, it's Hart Bochner. And I was like, should I know who that is? Like,
Yeah, I mean, the casting gives him this auspiciousness, like, he should be someone that you're recognizing. So I don't know, people are just yelling at us, like, talking about all the roles that we should know.
I know.
From, but, sorry. Okay, so Solomon is dropping some exposition here, and it's basically just that everybody should be working on their thesis film pitches because all of them are eligible for this Hitchcock Award. And this is where we find out there's a huge cash value of $15,000.
I shat myself.
I don't know. Is that a big number? Because that seems really small, but this is also 20 years ago.
It's a stipend, though. So here's my thing. $15,000, like, I will take that now, happily.
Sure.
But let's say, like, it's to help pay for tuition in California.
Mm-mm.
That's maybe a semester?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and they treat it like it goes hand in hand with this guaranteed success story in Hollywood, and you're like, well, $15,000 and success are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And throughout all of this, we get our first of many red herrings, which is P.A. Kevin, as in he is a PA whose name is Kevin, and he is played by Derek Aslan, and he is watching from the rafters and reciting the exact same speech as Professor Solomon. So you're like, what's his deal? He's weird.
Does he appear again in the film at all?
He does a couple of times.
He shows up on Amy's set to try to help out a couple of times, and then he is the shooter in her movie at the end.
Oh, yeah. But he doesn't, like, play a role, really. Like, calling him a red herring, I feel like is a stretch.
Well, it's because that's his only function. Like, he turns up every once in a while, and you're like, maybe it's this guy, because we don't see him very often.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah, not because I think this film does any of its red herrings very well. I saw somebody who's actually tried to argue that Vanessa was a red herring. I was like, I'm sorry, what?
I saw that as well, and I didn't get that.
No. I was like, a red herring for, like, Amy's vagina, maybe. Like, because that's where she wants to go. Doesn't even make sense, but it got a laugh, so I'm going to pat myself on the back for that.
There you go.
Okay, so most importantly, at this point, we are introduced back to Security Officer Reese, who is played by the wonderful Loretta Devine. She picks up Amy as she is walking through campus in a snowstorm.
I love Loretta Devine. Unfortunately, I think this is her best scene, not because of any fault of hers, but just because I think the script dumbs her down so much after this moment in the film.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, she's giving it her all, and I love her.
I love her too, and I was really hoping that we would see her more.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was fun that the fact that she was in the original one, so you would think that she would have like a major part. Never once did I think that she had anything to do with the killings. Like,
No.
you know,
No.
I knew that she was like investigating, and I just feel like she was just saying things that we all were thinking.
Yes. Yes. Until, like, I mean, again, later in the film, when Jennifer Morrison is like, I think there's a murder. Can I watch your tapes? No, I'm busy.
I mean, she's watching her favorite movie, so she's
Fair. You want somebody coming into your favorite movie watching time and saying, hey, I need those tapes? You're like, no, get out of here. I'm watching coffee.
We're all film lovers here, so who among us would... you know what? That's good, valid point, Zena. We would all probably say the same thing.
I mean, I'm sure that we would watch it, but I mean, that was like ridiculous. But I mean, I would be a little irritated, just being honest, if I'm watching like one of my favorite movies and like really just having a good time. And dancing.
Yeah, I will echo your sentiment though, Zena. I remember when I saw this in theaters, I was really annoyed because I was so excited that Loretta Devine came back, and then to see her not misused, but underused to such an extent, because I really thought that it was going to be her and Amy as like the final girls solving this case, because we know that Reese has been through this before. And after this first scene where she basically relates the events of the first film, it seems like she gets a memory wipe and she just kind of acts like, oh no, I can't do anything because I lost my job and now I'm at this new school.
Well, it's also the same issue with the first film where it's like she's the only security guard on this campus.
Mm-hmm.
And also I admit, when I watched this again and she was like, oh yeah, like there were murders and the university covered it up and they fired me because I wouldn't cover it up. And I was like, that doesn't seem realistic. And then I forgot that that's exactly what happens in the first movie, though, when they're like, there were these murders in the 60s and the university covered it up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I 100% bought that part.
And then I kind of thought that maybe the reason why, not that I'm trying to defend Reese, even though we all love her, but the reason why I think that she was like so set, like, and sick of Amy, maybe because, you know, with the first one, with what happened and it was a student, you know, so I mean, and she was acting a little weird, so I think maybe she just assumed that it has to be a student and not a professor.
You know what? No, you're right. It's like, look, I already had these two bitches last year, and one of them was a killer and one of them was really annoying, so you're one of them.
I've got this new student who is both annoying and
might be a killer.
Yeah.
Well, also because Reese only seems to interact with Amy until her last scene of the film.
Yeah, you would almost believe that Loretta Devine was like, yeah, I'm willing to do this, but I've only got 2 days. And they were like, ugh, let's film all the Amy scenes then.
The interview, so you get Loretta Devine and Rebecca Gayheart and Jessica Caulfield on the interviews for this Blu-ray. Both Devine and Gayheart are very much like, yeah, it was a really different vibe on this set, and it's really upsetting that, like, you know, they didn't bring back, like, Alicia Witt and Jared Leto. But again, like, that was never the idea to begin with, which is also kind of odd. Mm-hmm. But after watching some of the documentary on the first film, it was clear that the first film, like, everyone loved each other and had a blast on that film, and I didn't get the vibe from the crew on this film. And I do think that, like, they're obviously being polite about it, you know, like, oh yeah, it was just different, but like there's also a hint of like, I mean, Gayheart, I'm sure, because she has one scene in the film. But even Loretta Devine, she's just kind of like, yeah, it was just really different.
It's got to be hard to transition from one to the other because, like, this would feel like a very different type of film. And I guess we have to remember that talent doesn't always get informed of, like, how the decisions get made. So they might have felt that there's some animosity, like, well, it would have been nice to have seen the people from the first film. Not sure why they're not here. And it's like, oh, did no one ever tell you that was never the plan?
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
All this to say, Loretta Devine looks fucking great. She got a glow up between movies, and she looks fantastic.
I agree.
Okay, so after hearing this amazing story, Amy is like, wow, $ plagiarism. And she immediately goes to Solomon and she's like, I've got my thesis film. It's this shitty remake of Urban Legend. I'm sorry, Amy is talentless.
Do y'all buy that any... Because, I mean, we all work in horror, right? Like, we all write about horror. We know that horror is the bastard redheaded stepchild of the film world.
Mm-hmm.
Do y'all buy for a second that either of these teachers would be like, yeah, that's a great idea?
I mean, I think to defend the film, Solomon's going to be on board because he immediately is like, oh, I can work this because this bitch is dumb. So I can turn her into a scapegoat and make my $15K.
Yeah.
And honestly, I just think that, again, because of who her dad was, like, they probably just felt just let her do whatever she wants.
Yeah, she's a legacy. Don't upset her.
I think they were just happy that she was at the school.
That's true. Yeah, maybe it's like she's great. She's good to have as an alumnus. Also, maybe she's a secret genius. Who knows?
I know that in film school you are expected to like try your hand at a bunch of different things, but I was so confused at this part because I didn't know why we were introduced to her working the sound equipment on Toby's film, and then she's like, I've got to make my own movie. And I was like, aren't you a composer? Are you not doing the sound? Like, is that not your specialty? Maybe I'm just dumb about how film school works.
I always thought that with the school, because I was so close with going. Then I didn't last minute. I felt overwhelmed and, Anyway, but I always thought that you would still have to help out other students on their set.
Okay.
Like, like they would do the same thing for her. So even with Toby, when he, was so rude to her, embarrassed her in front of all her friends, in front of the cast and everything, and she was only offended at the fact that he called her a little girl. She didn't care about anything else. With that part as an example, he was supposed to be her cinematographer, and then he just quit, and it's just kind of like, oh no, now she has to find like a new one.
Okay, that totally makes sense. Okay, so we're gonna get this randomly inserted scene that doesn't seem 100% connected, and Trace, you can explain why.
Alright, so we're at the martini scene, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, basically, this scene was not in the script. The first death in the film was Sandra's, which was about at the 30-minute mark. And one of the producers on this film, she was like, yeah, we watched it and we were like, this isn't working. And so they realized they needed a death earlier in the film. So they bring in the writer of the first film, Silvio Orta, to write the kidney heist scene. Because they were like, all right, we didn't get to see that in the first movie, so why don't we see it in this one? And I didn't realize that he was brought in to write it, but honestly, after knowing that, I was like, that makes sense, because the method of murder and then this whole sequence with the kidney seems so much meaner than anything else in this film.
It's more graphic. It's even like shot better, I dare say, than like a lot of the other murders, because I feel like we don't get to see anything in the other ones, whereas here we actually kind of do. Also,
the funny thing is, though, like, okay, the killer like grabbing her wound and pulling it open, and then the killer feeding the kidney to the dog, that was Ottman. That wasn't in Silvio's script. That was just Ottman. And I think it was because, though, when this was... Because this is all doing... Like, they had finished filming the film. They were done, and then they were like, wait, we need something else. I think he was, like, maybe kind of fed up, because he was also probably editing and composing the film.
Right.
And he was like, fine, you want gore? Let's do it. And then he just did this. It does feel different, but I will confess, this is my favorite sequence in the film. I mean, minus the ending, which is real stupid, but I love it.
This one is my favorite scene as well. I feel like you guys said, like, I do feel like it is a whole lot meaner and just really rough. And I was always screaming at the part because no matter how many times I watch the scene, obviously things just don't change. I just don't understand how she could be so dumb.
Yeah.
When she slips and it's just like, no, because she could have like easily like sneaked away. But yeah, it's just such an intense scene. And even when, you know, the killer was grabbing at her open wound, like,
Yes.
yeah, like you could feel it when you're just looking at it. And I really, really love that scene.
She also sucks at climbing out of a window because I swear to God, that it's like 15 seconds of her just like halfway out this window, not moving. And I'm like, jump out the window.
You do have to remember she is missing a kidney.
She is missing a kidney, but she's spry enough to like get the front half of her body out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because, I mean, Joe, do you know who Jacinda Barrett is? Because I said that to you yesterday and you didn't really like, it didn't connect with you.
It has not pinged. I know I should know.
So at this point in time, she was known for The Real World London, but she's also the lesbian, like, pseudo red herring love interest in Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason. She's in The Last Kiss with Zach Braff and what's her face from the OC? None of this.
Why would you think I know any of this garbage?
I don't know.
These are all terrible credits.
She's also in that TV show Bloodline on Netflix. She's a main cast member in that.
Oh, I did watch the first 2 seasons of that, and yet I still can't quite remember. I wonder if she was like the white trash girlfriend of Ben Mendelsohn or something.
I have no idea. But anyway, her name's Jacinda Barrett. I always get her confused with Rebecca Hall for some reason.
Oh, yeah, that is not the same actress.
Oh, she was in Poseidon, the Poseidon Adventure remake.
No.
It's a bad movie. But no, yeah, anyway, so I think this is great. The problem with putting this scene here is that it does set... This to me is when the film peaks, at least in terms of the deaths. Because as much as my opinion on this film raised, I still do think that all of these deaths are really weak, except for this one.
Yeah, there's a level... this just feels more visceral, I think, than the other ones. Mm-hmm. Like, we're not only seeing more, it is more brutal, and yeah, I just feel the energy in this one, whereas the other things, it's kind of like, it feels like everything is happening at the same level. This one, it's like, you're actually getting the high that comes with, like, a well-executed death scene.
Right.
So, rip Lisa, you dead. We didn't even really know your name. I had to look it up on IMDb.
It's never mentioned, but I guess she was also an actress maybe in Travis's film?
That's the indication, yeah. She worked on his film, so he's a bad boyfriend and or colleague, and he leaves her, and she dies. So the next day, Amy spies on Travis, because he is kind of like the super achiever in everyone's class, so everybody wants to get a look at his student film. And she is scared by Stan and Dirk, and they are dressed in parkas and masks. And I can only assume that this is that playfulness that Ottman was talking about, because, of course, the parkas are from the first film.
It is, and we also get the I don't know. I laughed at this. I don't know if y'all laughed or groaned, but I do love the latex and cornflakes are digital. Digital's better, man. Well, George Lucas would disagree. Well, fuck George Lucas. I thought it was funny.
I laughed at that.
Funny connection, though. Anthony Anderson says that, and he also says fuck Bruce Willis in Scream 4.
Yeah, he just gets to say a lot of fuck famous people lines, doesn't he? So Amy manages to get Travis to agree to talk about her new exciting idea, and then she gets everybody together. This is when Toby shows up and quits on her after threatening her, claiming that she stole his idea, which... like, what? He's doing a slasher film and she's doing a horror film with urban legends. Like, they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, Toby, you need to slow your roll. You're overreacting.
I mean, I know that Toby looks different than the rest of them, but honestly, I don't know.
Do you mean 20 years older?
It's me, and it's on me, and I get that. But I also, like, because Toby, like, disappears from this movie until the end, right?
100%.
Yeah.
When he comes back in, I was just like, who is that?
Yeah.
But, you know, I understood why Toby was upset.
Yeah.
Because it's just kind of like, you're working on my movie. You know that this is the genre that I'm doing. And, like, he even said, you know, this is my thing. And maybe I'm just one of those overprotective, like, horror fans. Like, this is mine. Mm-hmm. But I don't really feel that he was, like... It wasn't so much of her
Oh.
idea, but it's just the fact that you still expected him to work on your movie. Like, I don't know. Like, it was just kind of like a...
To an extent, Zena, I do get that. I do get it. Also, these are fucking... Well, okay, wait. They're in film school. They're undergrads, right? This isn't like... Or is it film graduate school?
They're undergrads, but they're in their final year.
Got it. Okay, so these are 22-year-olds. He is behaving in a way that I would expect a 22-year-old film student to behave.
Especially when all of these people think that they're in contention for this Hitchcock Award, so they all are clearly narcissists.
I mean, I will tell you, as someone who went to film school, I've seen...
Not for production.
Yeah, no, I did the studies route. I didn't do the production route. But I can tell you that there are a lot of Tobys in the world.
I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, Toby is a second cousin to Randy, if we're being honest, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the pretension. That's your pretentious filmmaker right there.
Yeah. I do like the idea that Ari Aster stole this storyline from Midsummer, though, where it's like, you stole my thesis project, and now I'm going to turn you into a bear. Didn't see that coming, did ya?
I did not at all.
Okay, so Amy goes to visit Travis, and he is day drinking. So that is your cue that he is very sad and upset. And it turns out that he has received a C on his film.
C-.
C-. I mean, it's not good. He was expecting that A, baby, and he did not get it. And
it makes him ineligible for the Hitchcock Award.
Yeah, and he's broke. He doesn't have her money. I do like that that's embedded in here, and you don't really understand why it matters, because we don't know anything about Amy at this point. But later on, you're like, oh, she's rich, and she's trying to take that scholarship.
Oh, right, because we don't even know yet that she's the daughter of a famous Oscar-winning documentarian.
No, we do not, Trace. I will say, I mean, I'm going to come down hard on this character, Amy, because I think she sucks. But I really hate her in this scene, because she's like, it'll be okay. Also, do you have Simon's number?
That was so inconsiderate.
Oh my god, y'all, I understood it. I was like, well, she did her necessary apologies, and then she was like, I really hate asking you this, but I felt I understood it.
But I guess it's more because of her reasoning, because she has the money. So it's just kind of,
right.
She doesn't have to like depend on it. And it's like, clearly she had a crush on him. Why don't you, I don't know, make him feel better? You guys could do some stuff. Like, but no, she's only thinking about herself and impressing her family.
She doesn't even like touch him reassuringly. She just kind of hangs back. She's like, okay, but I'm going to need that number.
Meanwhile, he's like, yeah, let me send you this like 30-year-old guy who is not in college to
He was so annoying.
Okay,
terrible.
So I have questions about Simon. Is he supposed to be a European sex offender? I don't want to say anything bad about actor Marco Hofschneider, but he shows up on set and I was like, okay, who is this fully adult man hanging out with these college students, and which one of these girls is he going to send to Hostel Part 3?
I'm glad that you said that, because literally when he showed up, I was like, I gotta check this guy's age. He was about 30 when this was filmed. So but I don't know if he's meant to be a student or if he's meant to be an actual like DP in the film world that helps out students sometimes.
Yeah, the fact that he has the professional camera is the tipping point, right? Like, oh, is it because he actually works in the industry, or does he have weird connections?
I'm sorry, I just thought that he was... You guys are making me laugh too much, but no, I just thought that he was just like, yeah, like a guy who like, it was his like day job, like his regular job.
Right.
And he was just like a regular, like not regular, but just like a sleazy guy, you know?
But it's funny though, because he's actually written kind of nice. Like, even when they're watching the Sandra's quote unquote acting later, and he's like, you can turn into he's actually a nice character. He just looks like a pedophile.
Yeah, I mean, he starts off a little iffy because he definitely hits on Vanessa. And at this point, after the night shoot has finished filming, she gets into the car with her girlfriend. So he gets very excited by that. And you're like, oh no, he's a perv. But then after this, he does seem kind of decent. He just looks iffy.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, I do enjoy Vanessa's line of like, yeah, you know, if you were a girl, I'd fuck you.
That just made his whole day.
Yeah. It's just kind of a fun way because we don't, again, like we know very little about most of these characters. It's very broad strokes, but I do like that they're not like, she doesn't turn to him and she's like, oh, I'm all lesbian. She's just like, this is my girlfriend. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like, it's always tricky. I mean, when you have straight men writing a gay character, it's usually a lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that Mendes's Vanessa is actually, for the most part, like, an inoffensive portrayal of lesbianism. Now, granted, I realize that I'm saying this as a gay man and not as a lesbian, so your mileage may vary, but I actually did really like her, what little we get of her in this movie.
I
Same.
definitely like her, but I will challenge, I think there's a couple of points where it veers a little into some predatory lesbian tropes.
Bring them up when we get there.
I will. First, we've got to knock off Sandra. So she can't get into her car. She has to go back onto the set. She mistakes this person for someone. And then this person sets up a video camera and murders her with a switchblade.
So I know you haven't seen Peeping Tom, Joe, but this is a Peeping Tom homage, like, through and through. Like, killer with a camera, killing women. I love this. Not necessarily the death, but just I love watching, like, how it cuts between the film they're watching with her and then her actual death. And her fucking fake acting screams. God bless Jessica Caulfield. Like,
Yes.
she gives it her all. When she goes into, like, kung fu...
Oh.
This is pretty clever, and it kind of starts a visual motif that we'll get throughout the rest of the film, which is that whenever Amy sees something, we get a lot of close-ups of her eyes, and there's the light flashing on her face. And it is, I don't know, it's working for me in a certain regard. I think the problem here is that all of these people are watching this actual murder, so technically they're now watching a snuff film, and they all are just like, like, oh, that was her best performance. And you're just like, okay, but aren't you questioning who shot it and why the reel was switched? And like, they all just take it on, like, in stride, and it's really bothering me.
I felt that way as well, especially because we, as the viewers, we saw her acting. So we saw it from like the start. But I really, like, I love this scene. I feel like it was a genuinely, like, creepy scene. Even when I first watched it, I thought it was that way. And then even rewatching it the other day, I love, like, the whole setup of it. I love the way the camera's moving. I love the lighting. Why her keys were in gore blood, I don't know.
I wrote that down too!
What was she doing that she ended up with the keys there?
Well, I think she was
Right?
filming the scene, and I think the implication that her keys fell off. I do love Vanessa going, get her! Yeah, get her!
Yeah, I like that. That made me laugh. Like, they're just sick of her. But it's just like, like you guys said, it's like, seriously, why haven't anybody questioned the fact that this is the best thing that she's ever done?
Oh, she just magically became a really talented actress.
Right.
Maybe it's a testament to Amy's direction.
Well, yeah. I get what you're saying, that it does go on for a bit too long for them to be like, to not be like, what's going on? Even for Amy, to be like, y'all, this isn't my footage.
Yeah. Right. I mean, this is very much the homage to the first film where Sasha dies and they're listening to her on the radio and they can't figure out that she's play acting until it's too late. But I feel like they came to that realization in the first film, and here they're all just a bunch of dum-dums.
But again, this is that comedy, though. This is the wacky tone that Ottman was going for, that literally any unbelievable aspect of this film, of which there are many, mind you, I just attribute it to just being, it's intentionally stupid. This movie is a soap opera, but with a horror veil over it.
Okay, well, let's get to your dose of melodrama then. So, as they file out of class, they learn that Travis has died by suicide, and that just immediately pumps the brake on anyone caring about Sandra, because everyone's very upset about Travis.
I was going to comment that it's a shame that we don't get to see his death. I mean, obviously we know that he gets murdered, but I do think it's important to note that this movie is filmed about 6 months after Columbine happened.
Okay. Yeah, so choices were made.
Yeah, I mean, Ottman can say he doesn't like gore all he wants, but I think even if he did, I think the studio would have put the kibosh on any, like, extreme gore anyway.
Yeah, and even, like, guns on campus, it's probably a surprise that they were able to keep the ending. Yeah, so we get a little hand-waving action about Sandra when Graham says, yeah, she's away in Los Angeles. He's hitting on Amy. It's really awkward and uncomfortable. Joey Lawrence is not a great actor either.
He's also a non-entity in this movie.
I feel like with his character, I don't know if they were trying to make it seem like he was the one that was, the killer.
Oh, 100%.
But it was just kind of like we didn't know too much about him. Like, we kind of saw that he kind of had like a crush on Amy, but other than that, we really didn't, and that he had money and connections, but that's about it.
Well, and that's the thing, like, the movie doesn't use him. Like, okay, we get that scene at the funeral, which, okay, cool, antagonist, boom, there you go, that's a red herring. But then, yeah, it's like we don't really get, like Toby, he also kind of disappears until that final scene.
He absolutely does, yeah. This film has issues with almost having too many characters and then not knowing what to do with them in the
or
scenes
not enough deaths.
Or not enough deaths, yeah. Like, you should be maybe setting up some of these people as red herrings and then knocking off others more quickly, because people die in very quick succession or not at all. They're just gone. But because he does have money, that's why he's able to recognize her as the daughter of an Oscar-winning documentary filmmaker. And she's like, shut up. I'm a real filmmaker. You're like, okay, Amy, that's great.
Actually, no, this character exists to introduce that tidbit of information because it does play a crucial role in the killer's motive.
Mm-hmm. It's such a weird motive, but okay. So Amy, at this point, has also seen someone sort of like lurking on the fringes of their own funeral. Their brother's funeral. So she goes to the bell tower, and this is where she meets Trevor Stark, who is Travis's identical twin brother.
I guess this is also your Vertigo reference, too.
Yes.
I haven't seen Vertigo in a very, very long time. But isn't there a whole thing about, it's like, the main thing is like the blonde woman dies, but then like a blonde woman that looks just like her also shows up?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, y'all, listeners. I promise I've seen Vertigo. It's just been about 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Okay, so after Trevor is introduced, this is where we filmed the midnight scream scene. So this is the urban legend that someone dies while people are screaming at midnight. So this is Simon's time to shine. He is beaten to death with a camera lens as Amy records the screaming audio.
I have a question for y'all, though. So when this is filmed, Ottman does this thing where he keeps cutting back to people's eyes and mouths during the murder.
Mm-hmm.
Does it look like they're screaming in those close-ups, or does it look like their mouths are just hanging open?
It just looks like it was open.
I'm screaming right now. Can't you hear me?
I was like, yo, there's no energy. And yeah, because Joe, you had mentioned this to me before, where you were like, there's no energy in this film. And this is the scene the most when I'm like, why aren't these people in these close-ups actually screaming? Now, granted, you can hear it, but you don't see it. And that's a big problem for me with this scene, because I think this scene could have been pretty clever, maybe. Well, also, this is also your reference to Sasha's scene, too. So it's like a second one.
Yeah, and again, I mean, part of the problem is this is what, Simon's maybe second or third scene? He was introduced, he's in the viewing room with them, and then he's killed here. And you're like, okay, I don't care about Simon, per se.
I mean, yeah. That's how I felt. Like, it was just like, oh, okay. Like,
oh, he's dead. Okay.
Yeah.
I do, again, I wish that there was something more to this death scene, but even the little touches like the lens rolling and then we get his reflection in the glass, and like, that's a cool shot.
I think a way to fix this, at least from an artistic standpoint, is to film the death from the point of view of the camera that's killing him.
Okay.
That does happen in a movie, and I cannot recall what it is off the top of my head, and I'm not going to look it up because I can't figure it out. So listeners, I'm sorry. If you know what I'm talking about, there is a movie when someone gets killed with a camera, and it's done with the POV of the camera.
And it's not Peeping Tom?
No. It's like someone like bashes someone's head in with a camera. Peeping Tom is like he has like a sword at the end of his camera, and he just like moves the camera into women's faces and stabs them.
Well, that's a lovely segue, because we should also acknowledge that this is the first time that we see the killer's outfit, and they are wearing a fencing mask at a film school. ?
I don't take the same issue with this as you do, because to me the parka in the first one's equally like stupid.
Yeah, but that one at least was from an earlier draft of the film, and they just were dum-dums who didn't switch it up. This one is like, what's a good mask? Fencing?
Look, I've never understood why they decided to go with that mask. I think if anything, they could have just kept it really simple and just do even a solid black mask.
Yeah, or a reflective one, more like a camera.
Yeah, that would have been really cool.
I don't take a huge issue with it. It's a funny sticking point. Like every time I see the box art for this, I'm like, oh right, the fencing mask.
Wait, no, Zena, are you a fan of the floating head poster of the 90s?
Yeah, I think that it's fun.
I am too. And so looking at the poster for this film with like the fucking fencing mask and all the floating heads, I like it. And like the tagline "Legends Never Die," I'm like, I think it's a really fun little bit. And while I agree that the fencing mask is stupid, I do think that it fits in with the stupidity of the rest of the film. That's my thing. I mean, I realize that I'm cutting this movie slack, but like, it's just, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. And you're allowed to. I mean, I hear what both of you are saying. I feel like, to me, it's just too middle of the road. Like, it's not serious enough, and it's not silly enough. And as a result, I'm just constantly left like, pick one.
I just think that they maybe forgot about, like, some details with certain things. And I do feel like, even with the mask, using that as an example, or even using just Sandra's character, like, wouldn't someone try to check up on her? And there were phones back then, obviously. So
phones existed.
I don't understand why no one didn't call her, but I guess because, even with that, like, I guess the excuse can be like, oh no, this happened, a student died, so then people move on. But I don't know, you never hear from her again. Like,
I'm just picturing Amy running in and being like, guys, I used my dad's money to invent something new. It's called the telephone. Okay, so this is when she goes to Reese and she wants the security tapes. And I do love Reese's line that she needs to start wearing a bell or something.
Oh, yeah.
It's all in Loretta Devine's delivery, but she's just such a joy in this movie.
Using her flashlight as a microphone was her idea.
So good.
It's really fun, but then you have her just completely dismissing this girl who's like, I think I heard someone die.
Mm-hmm.
But she did say she was wearing her headphones.
Wait, she's like, you said you were wearing your headphones and you were filming screaming, and you heard someone scream.
I mean, I'm kind of on Reese's side here.
Me too. And then on top of that, again, going back to Reese watching her favorite movie, like...
Yeah, she's pissed off, and this girl doesn't have any proof. Get the fuck out.
So this next set piece, I hesitate to call it a set piece, because we can like literally gloss past it.
You mean Gail's Scream 2 sequence?
Kind of, but it's not as suspenseful. Like, she gets attacked in like a orchestra studio thing, like a sound studio.
Yeah, it's a sound booth that then transitions into an orchestra pit.
Which then transitions into a Blair Witch Wood chase. Which
Correct.
Then transitions into a weird, like, sewer corridor thing.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that at this moment, when she's under the grate, and, like, the killer is standing on top of the grate, and then she turns around and runs down this corridor, I'm like... You're telling me there was a corridor behind you to run down, but you decided to stand under the grate and look up at the killer who might have looked down at you at any moment.
Yeah, Amy sometimes acts like she's in a Jurassic Park movie, and if she doesn't move, the killer won't see her. Amy makes a lot of bad decisions, we'll put it that way.
But then she runs into Reese again.
Yeah, luckily Reese has actually been watching the tapes this time, and I love that Reese gets that jab in. She's like, I was watching the tapes. But Reese, unfortunately, she still does not believe her. So, Amy just can't let it go. So we get a Who Could the Killer Be running montage.
I liked this, though. I mean, it's a little... silly, but like I love the superimposition. Is that the right phrase for that? Superimposition? Superimposing?
Yeah. Superimpose, yeah.
Superimposing of all the characters over the fencing mask. I actually think it reminds me of the Scream 2 trailer when they're like, well, let's look at the suspects, and they just like rapid fire everybody.
See, I definitely went to Nip Tuck with the Carver because Ryan Murphy literally recreates this scene.
Oh.
It's like they all just take off the mask one after another, and you're like, oh, Ryan Murphy, you need to cut this man a check.
But Nip Tuck came out after this. Oh, this man. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm saying Ryan Murphy owes Ottman money.
Got it.
So they're then setting up for the Tunnel of Terror sequence. This is where you basically go on a love boat and all of the bodies that you see are actually real. So this isn't quite what happens, though. It's a little disappointing that they set it up like Amy's going to be on this ride and she's going to see the dead bodies of everybody as she goes by. And instead, she just ends up encountering the killer who kills both Stan and Dirk through electrocution. And then he just climbs by her on a rail. Again, she doesn't move, like she thinks he won't notice.
Okay, this scene was not my favorite.
Coming from you, that is like, this is an F scene for me.
Just because there was so much I felt that they could have done with it. Even just like what you said, Joe, with the scene, like her seeing the bodies, that could have been a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That I feel like that would have been more effective for me. But I already knew that Stan and Dirk, that they were going to die.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like you knew that from the start. And then honestly, not in a mean way. It's just like, it's not that I didn't like Amy. You know, I just kind of thought that she was boring, but it's just kind of like she just keeps on skating by.
Yeah.
And once again, if with Reese, I understood why she felt that way. Why is she always there? Or she's always doing some weird stuff.
Well, then the killer's frame job is working.
Yeah, it really is. And it's just like, my thing is, I think with Reese, you know, because she's been down this path before, I think that she should have spoke to someone about this. Even if it were like the dean, like somebody needs to just keep an eye on her.
You know what? No, you're right. Because the first movie does have that dean character, and she actually is more cautious, saying like, hey, something might be going on, and the dean shuts her down because he's a dean. This movie, it like combines Reese with the dean character, thereby making her the fool almost.
Right.
It almost seems like we should have done away with one of these red herring students. Like, we should acknowledge that Vanessa and Toby and Graham all start off the scene, and then they're like, I'm going to peace out for a couple of minutes. You know, no big deal. Don't suspect me of killing anyone. And you're like, okay, you're all red herrings. Got it. But it feels like you could have taken one of those characters out. Like, Graham does nothing in this movie. Why wouldn't you turn that into, like, a second security guard? And then you could have Reese be the one who believes everybody, and he could be, like, the doubting Thomas.
Even in the climax, all Graham does is look through a window.
And then gets shot into an open grave. You're just like, okay, this movie needs to stop stealing from Scream 2, please.
I will say, though, that apparently the deaths of, oh my god, Anthony Anderson and Dirk.
Stan and Dirk.
Sure.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be more elaborate. But again, this is another situation where they were like, oh, we didn't have the budget. We also only had 3 days to shoot in this tunnel. And so they had to change their original deaths, and I don't know what they were. And Ottman was like, well, let's just electrocute them.
Honestly, your default should never be electrocution because it's so underwhelming.
And it looks bad because it's at 2000 CGI, or I guess 1999 in this case, CGI. I think it just looks really silly.
I find particularly Anthony Anderson's death where he like grabs a pole that's been electrocuted and you're like, oh, it looks like the Emperor from Star Wars has gotten into this.
And it's like kind of with Dirk's scene, you know, I like the fact that he thought that it was Stan, you know, because they kind of like play pranks on each other.
Right.
Maybe that could have been a little bit more detailed. It was just like I kind of felt like the reason why I wasn't a big fan of this scene, or I'm not, it's just the fact that I feel like it's kind of like rushed. And now since I know, like with the whole 3 days, it was.
Yeah. It was rushed and comes off on screen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, thankfully, as a result of these two characters meeting their untimely demise, the police are finally called in and we acknowledge that, yes, bodies have been discovered on this campus. It doesn't seem to change anything in the narrative, but at least now we know, okay, Stan and Dirk are definitely not in Los Angeles acting as coma patients. So Amy then bitches at Trevor for abandoning her, and he claims he was following Graham, blah, blah, blah. And it seems like they're really mad at each other, which means that they have to fuck.
But they don't.
But they don't. Because it turns out that he's stabbing her, but oh, it's okay, it's just a dream.
And, you know, what I find just kind of like, okay, well, did you even like his brother? She just really didn't care who it was. Like, you didn't really even know the brother. I thought that she would be more hurt about it, you know? But she just kind of moved on really even if it was a dream, I don't care. It's just, she just moved on pretty fast.
So what you're saying is she's easy.
She might be.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think one of the issues that I have particularly with the Trevor Travis, and the reason I'm always surprised that it doesn't turn out to be the same person pretending to be a twin, is that Matthew Davis doesn't alter his performance, so Travis and Trevor seem like the same person.
Okay, but that's even insinuating that Travis is given enough screen time to merit like characterization, because Travis is a nobody. Like, I don't know who Travis is. We see him in one scene and then we see him crying and then he's not in the movie anymore.
I mean, but can you blame me for thinking that his death was a hoax and that this Trevor character who just shows up looking exactly like him and claiming to be a twin? Like,
and I just don't get him and Amy's connection. You know, even wasn't he there afterwards, like at the end when she was filming her movie?
oh yeah, he's an actor all of a sudden.
Oh.
It's just a curious character detail that I don't know that the film always knows what to do with.
Well, yeah.
I mean, this film has some scripting problems. We'll acknowledge that.
Should have brought back the gay guy.
Right. Well, yes. So Amy ends up going back to the clock tower because she figures that that's where Trevor is, because she has woken up, he's not there. And what she finds instead is a Dexter-level murder set, and Vanessa is just hanging out like it's not the weirdest shit in the world. And she's like, you wrote me this love letter.
Okay, wait. She gets the fucking, like, villain reveal chair turn.
Uh-huh.
The Dexter set, by the way, is because they were like, oh, we need to make this tower that we built and we're so fucking proud of not as bland, so let's add like plastic to it and caution tape.
Well, if we learned anything from The Quiet, it's if you're trying to interior decorate, just add plastic.
Clearly, this movie thought that it would make it spookier. I am a sucker for a good stairwell chase scene, and I do kind of like this. I do like the camera tricks that Ottman uses with like spinning the camera around like the what's the space between the stairs called? Like the I don't know. I guess just the center of the stairwell.
Like the open area?
I do like, I mean, again, like, Vanessa is not a prominent figure in this movie. Honestly, no one is a prominent figure in this movie except for Amy.
Yeah.
I
want more from this. Like, it's unsatisfying that they get locked into this room and then Vanessa just gets yanked out and that's the end of her.
P.S. Joe, you said you were going to tell me when she was predatory, and I have not heard one of those things yet.
Oh, yeah.
I would say the most predatory that she is right at this reveal, where she's like, la, 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 la. But also before when she goes to get coffee and snacks. And right around the Tunnel of Terror sequence, she's very much like, girl, do you want any snacks? I'll bring you a snack. La, 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 la. In case you're wondering, the la 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 is lesbian vagina licking. That's what that sound effect is.
I feel so bad for your husband and your rim jobs.
How dare you, sir?
No, I mean, I do want more from this, but again, I still, it sounds so silly to cut this movie slack for this, but I do like that this movie in 2000 has this lesbian quote-unquote subplot. Sure. With her, like, being tricked. I mean, because it's kind of a thing, right? Where it's like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but like, where it's like, oh, like, someone wrote you a note and they're pretending to like you, but it's secretly bullies that are like fucking with you.
Yeah.
Aww.
So that's what this reminded me of. And so I actually felt for Vanessa in this moment because it's very much one of those things where it's like, oh, you're like, you know, a 22-year-old out gay woman in college. And you've just been duped into thinking that this person that is one of your friends that clearly she had feelings for is in love with you or into you. And I do hate, and this is Ottman's editing at fault, but like that we don't get any, like we get a moment of like realization from her, but it's also just kind of like, I would have liked more from it. But again, this isn't the movie for that. You know, we're not interested in these deep moments. It's like, oh, nope, gotta bring the killer in. So...
yeah, it's very much not Vanessa's scene. Like, it's a big moment for her, but it's also like, well, you're not the main character, so we got to move things along.
Right.
But it's hard because I actually think that Eva Mendes is playing this character really well. Like, we get so little of Vanessa, but I actually feel like she's the character who pops the most for me, apart from Sandra in this film.
I agree with you. And I was like really sad with her with her dying, especially the way that it happened. And it happened so fast, and then, Amy, I don't really feel like she could have done anything about that.
She also doesn't try, which is disappointing.
True.
I will have y'all know, though, that in the original script, and this is actually a smart choice, it had Vanessa open the door and stick her head out and then get yanked. And they were like,
no.
why would she do that? So they
Yeah.
had the killer open the door and yank her out, which is again, it still isn't great, but it's a much better decision than what the script had them doing.
I do wish that they could have just stayed on that moment where Amy actually comes out and sees her there, because it's so brief. It's like she barely even acknowledges, oh, my friend is hanging from the bell tower in front of me. She's just like,
Yeah.
"Brr," and I gotta go.
Well, it's also a weak death, though. Like, what urban legend is this?
Oh.
Also, the electrocution, I think because they didn't have the money in the time, but you're
No,
like...
the electrocution is because they die, and then she's riding through the tunnel as there's fake corpses, but there's also real corpses. That's that urban legend.
A little weak.
No, it is, and I asked myself the same question, but there's a part where Jennifer Morrison is riding through, and then you see Anthony Anderson's corpse, like she passes his corpse. So that's what that is.
Oh, okay. See, it was so dark when I was watching it that I couldn't even tell which were the animatronic and which one were the real bodies. I thought that she just sees them at the end.
One was Anderson. And listeners, if y'all are yelling at us because y'all are like, well, it's the bell tower is clearly this urban legend, email us.
Oh yeah, that famous bell tower urban legend.
But honestly, no, from here, we're in the climax now.
Basically, yeah. So Reese sees Amy run out of the tower. She runs into Trevor. They realize that everybody who worked on Travis's terrible thesis film, well, we're meant to assume it's terrible because he got a low mark on it. I do like that he is such a dick that he called his film The Gods of Men. Just like, you would.
Again, this is one of those things that where I feel like it's like just a commentary on pretentious film students. Because again, that feels like a
100%.
very film student title.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, Travis, how do you envision yourself? Oh, a god among men. Yeah. So they do some basically J-horror level investigation. They're like, play back the video. Oh, there's a splice. Oh, look at the credits.
I like this whole sequence though. Honestly, I don't think there's a lot of suspense in this movie, but I do kind of like, I mean, again, it does feel like this film was written and directed by a film person. I mean, obviously all films are, but
yeah, someone who was trying to pay homage to films.
but I like the splice thing being like a critical plot point of the film. I think it's a really fun little reveal.
I thought it was a fun little reveal too, but it's just so crazy that, Amy, she went through all that stuff and then she has to somehow calm herself down. And then, she's watching and she sees that little split second thing. Because I didn't see it the first time I watched it, and I'm sure that you guys did it. But yeah, I get it. They have to move the movie along. And so when they show Sandra and her laughing or crying, I don't know what she's doing, but that made me
The best thing ever.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like the reveal. I like the way, with the professor, that it was him this whole time.
Mhm.
I mean, it was a little like, it sounded like he was like the ultimate villain with his gloves on and, trench coat and stuff and evil laughter. And that he would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for those Mesley kids or whatever. But
You're right.
But it's like a fun build-up.
He really is, though. He's kind of a ridiculous, like, I had this grand plan where I was going to steal the film, and then you came along, daughter of a documentary filmmaker.
Let's jump to this, okay? So I do... Okay, the fucking motive is stupid, but I do love that our two final people, the final girl and the final boy, they kidnap who they think is the killer and strap him to a chair.
Can we also talk about the fact that they dress up in costume to kidnap him?
Oh, yes!
Yeah.
Yes! No, that's... Because,
Like, to the props department!
she dresses up like a cop, right?
Yeah.
And she, like, stops his car.
Yeah. How did they even know where he was going to be?
I don't know why you're asking this question at
I
this
know,
point.
I know.
I have no idea.
And he's like, hey guys, I not only invented the telephone, I also invented Find My Phone.
I will say that I didn't expect him on my first viewing to be the killer.
No.
Now, granted, in the first film, I didn't expect Brenda to be the killer because it's smart screenwriting. In this movie, I didn't expect Professor Solomon to be the killer because
Who?
I forgot who he was.
Exactly. Talk about characters who have disappeared. When was the last time we saw him? Is it when she pitched No, it was when he was speaking at Travis's memorial.
Zena, do you have a succinct description of this man's motive that you would like to impart on us?
You know what, guys? Okay, even though it was kind of not the greatest. I thought that he could have got away with it if he would have just kept his mouth shut. He should have just killed them. Okay, so basically, he decided that he was going to kill off all the people that worked on Travis's film.
Right.
Yep.
Is it Travis or Trevor?
It's Travis.
Thank you. Okay.
Trevor's the soap opera twin.
Okay. Okay. If he would have just kept his mouth shut and just silently killed them and then blame Amy.
Yep.
And, you know, her family can afford a lawyer. So, like, a really good one. So she would have been fine. And I'm not saying I would never do something like this.
Oh.
You know, not that I'm trying to reason with him, but I think that he got sloppy because clearly, even when he knew that this person is not, you know, Travis, right? He like called himself out on it, you know? And then when he did announce it, so I'm sorry, I probably didn't even say that. So basically he decided to kill, you know, all the people off who worked on Travis's film. So the people included, it was Vanessa, Stan, Dirk, Lisa, Simon, you know, Sandra, and
I think that's everybody except Amy.
Okay, and so then, so obviously somebody has to take the blame, and that makes sense. And I think it should have been Amy.
I agree. I think if you remove the framing of Amy from this, it might be a little bit more easy to swallow.
Well, yeah, because the problem is that he's got two motives, right? Like, you should have just taken the film and made a run for it and passed it off as your own. Like, if you want to kill a bunch of people, even he should have killed Amy and framed her in death.
Right.
But the problem is that he gets greedy and he
has to explain it to her.
Well, no, he wants revenge for what happened to him because he's a little dick and he can't let it go.
We left this out because he was also up for the Hitchcock Award against someone else, and it was a hung jury. And basically, Amy's dad, award-winning documentarian Taylor Mayfield, was brought in to cast the deciding vote, and he voted for the other student, which then cursed Professor Solomon, who was then just student Solomon, to be a teacher.
Yeah, it's like here's your consolation prize. You have to become a teacher at this school.
I feel like that's on him. He could have kept on trying and stuff, but
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, but the thing is that I agree, like, he should have just killed, you know, Amy off, but I think the reason why he wanted to kill the other students is that just in case if someone tried to say, hey, wait a minute, the ones who worked, you know, on Travis's film, they would have been like, no, that's whatever his name is. And
what I think happened, and I'm just, you know, shooting darts in the dark here.
Oh yeah, we're trying to make sense of this film.
I think Derrickson and Boardman had a professor who was really bitter about being a film professor.
Right.
Yeah.
So they had their own Solomon, and they were like, no, it'll be a fun thing to do. Let's write him into this screenplay.
No, I'm not, this is a stereotype, but, like, I think there's a thing where it's like, oh, film professors are people who tried to make films but didn't, and they didn't make it, and they're failures.
Yeah, and as we've talked about numerous times, that is not the case. A lot of us do not actually want to make movies if we're critics. It's
Absolutely,
like, that's the path we choose to go to.
This is either them as young, recent college graduates who are thinking that, or they did have a teacher who was really bitter, who did try to make it in Hollywood and didn't, and now they're teaching. So they were like, oh, that would be a really good villain for this movie.
Yeah. Or, you know, it's just don't trust adults.
I almost forgot, though. So Ottman comments on this motive in the commentary. And I have to read this quote because it is hilarious. Ottman says, I kind of thought that the killer's motivations in Urban Legend's Final Cut, he says my movie, were pretty interesting and fun. I mean, I can't even tell you what the reasons were for people killing everyone in Scream 2 and 3. They're so convoluted. I didn't understand what they were talking about. At least here in this movie, it seems to make sense.
No. Just don't say anything.
Yeah, like, definitely just don't compare yourself to other films.
Right.
I mean, I think the idea was Scream 3 had just come out, so I think he was comparing it to Scream 3. I think that he lumps it in with... But even Scream 3, it's like... But he was rejected by his mother. Like, it is convoluted, yes, and it's silly, but it does make sense. This movie, I don't even know, man.
I love the idea of a faculty member killing students to steal a student film, thinking that you would then, like, the whole thing that they introduce with the Hitchcock Award is that by winning that is what will get you the gateway into Hollywood. So here he's not saying, I'm going to take your film, win the Hitchcock Award, and then get into Hollywood. He's saying this film is apparently so good, it's just going to open all of the Hollywood doors. And you're like, why don't you hire someone and get them to make you a movie? Like, you don't need to kill a bunch of people.
Right.
To do
I
that.
also really wonder about, like, would no one question... Let's say he'd gotten away with this. He makes this movie. I'm sorry, he releases this movie as his own. Would no one look at this and say, but everyone that worked on this film is dead?
It just becomes a new urban legend.
I mean,
Yeah.
I that's the reason for framing Amy, and I get that, but it's also like, do you not think that... I mean, obviously, if it's Reese, no, they're not going to figure it out. But B, if it's a cop, like a legitimate cop, not a security guard...
Ouch.
I think that he was just going to clean the names off of the film and claim that it was him or some other people.
It's a vast conspiracy. He's got like 5 other people that he would get to sign on saying that they worked on this film. Also, as a sidebar, it doesn't make any sense for him to then kill Toby, except for the fact that Toby now knows that he's the killer, but he definitely is like, so wait, you didn't work on the film? And then he shoots Toby, and you're like, but you've been killing people who did work on the film.
Well, no, but because he's going to kill Amy and Trevor no matter what. But also the thing is here, though, that as we see, Graham is in the window somewhere, like, watching all this.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Okay. I do like the gun standoff. I do think that... Because we get the Chekhov's gold-trimmed gun.
Yeah.
I really do like this standoff. The problem is that the writing of this scene is as campy as Rebecca Gayhart's performance in the first movie. The problem is here that the performances aren't as campy as Rebecca Gayhart's performance.
Yeah, Bachner is honestly kind of terrible, especially in this. Like, I know when we talked about Scream 2, we talked about how Laurie Metcalf is so capable of delivering that villain monologue, and you can't give that to just any old actor, because if it doesn't play right, it comes off ridiculous. And this is our example. Like, Bachner isn't doing anything with this, and he's so unthreatening as a result.
And the problem is, though, in Die Hard, and I know I'm going back to Die Hard because that's what I know him from, he is campy as fucking Die Hard, playing this smarmy asshole, and here he is just not giving a fuck.
Yeah, I would say the closest he comes to, like, nailing some kind of campy performance is when he threatens Amy with sending her to a lesbo prison.
I laughed at that.
Dear Lord. Yeah, so they have this Rodriguez-esque standoff where there's a bunch of guns and everybody's pointing at each other. I would have liked this to have gone on a little longer. Like, he tries to shoot her, it doesn't work. They scramble, they get another gun. Like, you know, keep it going for a little bit, because it's like they pick up the first gun they see, and she's like, yep, got the gold one.
This is Reese's smart moment, too, because she has a moment where she's like, it's a fake out, where she thinks, it makes you think that... Actually, no, question for y'all. Do we think that she knows ahead of time that she's like, okay, cool, this guy's the murderer? Or is she thinking like, no, it is Amy. Oh, wait, no, it's actually this guy.
Yeah, I think for a hot second she maybe suspects Amy, and then she's like, wait a second, I didn't say that.
That's what I thought as well. I think that she realized that it was him. He had all
But
the
that
motives.
makes
He
her
was
look
so
so much
angry.
more stupid.
It makes her less competent, and it makes him more of an idiot, because if he had just kept his mouth shut, like you said, Zena, it's like, stop explaining. You would have gotten away with it.
Another question, because I actually, as much as I dislike Amy, I love the it's out of focus line.
It's a nice little gut punch.
I mean, I guess. I was just kind of over Amy at this point. Just because, like, don't get me wrong, like, this is terrible what happened, but it's just kind of like, you know... Okay, this is going to sound really mean.
No, say it.
Go ahead.
I'm waiting.
just like how I felt with the first one with Natalie, I was kind of hoping that
she would die.
Either something happened to her, or, okay, fine, since you guys don't want to kill her off and that's not going to happen, that's like too much to ask for. Why don't she just drop out of film school? Let somebody else just continue to film. Because again, I don't feel like she was really in it like that. Like, I don't really think that she had a passion. Whereas, even though Toby, he was very whiny, you could tell that that's what he really wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So basically, yeah. Killer dies. They shoot him. Oh, sorry. Nope. Doesn't die. He gets wounded.
A breath.
He gets wounded. And yeah, then we get this thing where it's like, okay, so she's now, like, Amy is now this famous filmmaker who, now Graham is her agent, and she's putting Reese in her movie.
It's kind of terrible. I mean, one of the things that we didn't talk about that I loved is, like, the big thing with her at the beginning of the film is that she just can't figure out what her thesis film is going to be. And meanwhile, everyone else is already fucking shooting theirs and or done. Like, that's how much of a shit film student she is. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the film, we're meant to believe, she's the next big Hollywood thing? Fuck off.
Well, also the movie that she's filming, I mean, again, like, you can't grade it based on a production scene, but oh my god, this movie doesn't look good.
No, it looks garbage. Like, okay, let me ask you a question. Did you expect that she would end up making a documentary at the end of all of this?
No, because it's just like, what happened to what you were doing before? Where's your other project? Did you ever submit it?
It does seem...
I didn't even think about that.
It really does seem like a completely different film, doesn't it?
It really does, and that's my point. So I think just a trend I'm noticing with these with urban legend movies, I'm just not a fan of the leading girl. Like, no. I think that Vanessa would have been a better leading girl.
100%.
Well, and it would have been, I mean, obviously it would have been better if we had this lesbian person of color as your final girl, but instead we get blondie whitebeard Jennifer Morrison.
Yeah, it's her and the generic white twin who, like, that came to nothing, so I guess he just happened to have a twin, and that's never...
There is a deleted scene that shows them, like, hugging each other at a lake, and apparently Ottman was like, well, there were a few too many endings because they have the Brenda ending, and they were like, we just felt like we didn't need, like, another ending, so we just removed this, like, hug scene between them at the lake.
I mean... Also, why does Graham survive in this movie? I don't even know why he comes back at the end. He does nothing. But then also, like, why not up the body count and have him die, too?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess just because we really need to get on board with this idea that she's going to be the next big thing.
Well, we also glossed over the fact, though, that, I mean, again, Joe, your favorite thing, Toby dies from a gunshot in a slasher movie.
That's your favorite thing.
Ugh. Anyway, but luckily, this is not the end of the movie.
No. So our final scene is actually set in the asylum where Solomon is seen doped up in a wheelchair. And it's a weird bit of meta commentary that doesn't quite make sense. So we get to see the movie that Amy made, which apparently has gone straight to video because it's on the TV. So it is turned off by the nurse, who is played by Rebecca Gayhart's Nurse Brenda. And then she tells Solomon that they have a lot of things in common and that they should have a chat.
I love this. I think it's so good. No, Zena!
I'm sorry!
So you don't like this, Zena?
No, I wasn't going to say that.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to say that I don't understand why he wasn't sent to jail. Like, at this point, there's nothing wrong with him. He should have been in jail.
Oh, that is a good point. Yes.
That's crazy to me. He's a perfectly normal man. He was sane when he was killing people. He was selfish, and he wanted to be famous. So he should go to jail.
They're like, wait, we heard your explanation, and it makes so little fucking sense. You can't possibly be sane. You can't possibly have thought you would get away with that.
Well, we do skip the trial.
Thank God. Oh my God, urban legend trial.
No, but like imagine like a David E. Kelly show, like The Practice, but like with this guy, with this case.
Hard pass. It's a no for
I
me.
do appreciate the Alfred Hitchcock show theme on it.
Yes.
But again, this is one where it's, yeah, because they bring in Rebecca Gayheart for the interviews, and she's like, yeah, I really wish that they would have just done the cast from the first movie.
Oh, dear. So awkward.
I mean, and the shitty thing is, though, that this sets up a third film that could have been maybe used people from both movies.
Mm-hmm.
But because it was received so poorly, they did this direct-to-video sequel in 2004, 2005, one of them.
Okay, but honestly, can you imagine a movie where both Amy and Natalie are in it? It would just be like staring at white noise on the screen.
But this is also my point, though. Can you imagine a movie with Brenda and Professor Solomon? Like, these movies are... And I think that's why people... If you love the first one, you're going to have a lot of trouble with the second one. Because even though they're similar, they're so different. And I think maybe that's why I enjoyed this sequel more on a rewatch. Is because I haven't seen the first one in over a year. And so I was like, cool, I'm just going to watch this. Because I think every time I've watched the second one, I've always watched it after the first one. And it's always come up short for me.
Yeah, because they're just different films. Like, they're sequels, but this one doesn't feel connected to it in the same way. And I think part of the problem, too, is I know when I was watching them in the theaters as they were being released, I was expecting to get a Scream-like sequel where it was like, where are the characters, the story continues, and then you show up here and you're like, wait, what's this film school stuff? This isn't connected at all. But because they've got Reese there, you expect that it should.
I have a question for you both. So say if they did bring back the original cast, what do you think that they could have done?
Well, and I think maybe that was the idea as to why they didn't do that, is because they were like, what can we do?
I mean, I know I would have loved to have seen Paul and Natalie in the asylum, and like basically Brenda had gotten to them and she was like keeping them doped up.
Okay, but that's your secret ending to this movie. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what a whole other film would have been.
If we get an actual sequel, okay, so here's the thing. Your mystery is gone because we know Brenda's the killer. So we have to now have it to where Brenda...
Silent Night, Deadly Night's it.
Well, okay, but better. But no, like, Brenda's your main character.
Yes.
Like, and granted, I don't see that happening in the year 2000, which is why this is the movie we got. But I think that would be a really fun way to do it. Also, because, though, I mean, and I don't know if... Because, again, Zena, we haven't asked you what you thought about Gayheart, but, like, Gayheart's the best part of that first movie, in my opinion. And I think that most fans of the first movie agree that her performance is kind of what makes the movie, specifically in that climax. Yeah. But it's also kind of one of those things where I'm like, well, if we make Brenda the lead character, anti-hero of the film, is that too much? Is that like, you know, your comedic relief who's in like a fifth of the movie, who's really effective in small doses, but not in bigger doses? I don't know.
Yeah, you'd have to find a way to balance it out a little bit. So you'd have to have Gayheart probably tone it down a little bit, or have somebody who could like really counterbalance her, but not like in a snoozy way like Natalie does.
But you're right, Zena. I mean, I see your point, because I don't know how a sequel would have looked like. And I think the problem is, though, the gimmick. The gimmick with urban legends. Scream is easy to do. Scream is an easy sequel, because it's like, okay, cool, we're going after Sydney, let's just kill people. Yeah. It's hard. Even Silvio Orto was like, it was really hard enough in the first movie to come up with urban legends. He didn't even write the second movie, and he was like, so I can't even imagine what they were going through with the second movie. And it shows, because the legends in this movie are weaker than the first movie.
I mean, I don't 100% buy that, because if you look at how many films are set up on like pranks gone wrong and like urban legends, like literally most of the 80s films are, so you could just like go back through those and be like, I'm cherry picking.
Well, just so you know,
Train, Prom Night.
The third movie is Supernatural.
Of course it fucking is. They always go Supernatural for the third film. It's direct-to-video and Supernatural.
But the urban legend in that movie, because I watched an hour of it before we recorded this, I didn't finish it yet, but we've got Tanning Bed, Burning Death, which, by the way, preceded Final Destination 3. We've got Spiders in the Face, with the little bite on the face, the zit. We've got a boy peeing on an electric fence that then electrocutes him.
Oh, dear.
And maybe something else. I don't know. So there are others to go with, but yeah. I don't know. As it stands, I don't love this movie as much. I do love the first movie, but I will say that watching this again, going through all these bonus features, like, I did find it a lot more entertaining than I have in the past. And while I can't say that I love it, I do appreciate it a little bit more than I used to.
Okay, well, that's fair. Something I was thinking, because I was thinking about this for a while with this sequel. I think that they could have brought back the original cast. I think that maybe even with Natalie and Jared Leto's character, they could have been, living together. They graduated. Maybe one of them could have been a professor or a student teacher or something like that. I think that Reese could have been back there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And I do think that, Rebecca's character could have been in the shadows. But then I think it still would have had that silly tone where she's like, kind of being like a, what's the word for it? A mentor for a psychopath.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like she's grooming a next generation kind of deal.
I think it could have been a thing, but I mean, I know that this movie is not the greatest. I know that it's silly.
I hear you saying this with like a hint of apologeticness, and I don't think you need to. Love this movie. It is okay.
No, I'm just saying that's my point, is that even though it's like I can make fun of it and I can say that it is silly and I know that it's not like the greatest, but I still love it and I still feel like it's just better for me than the original one. I had more fun with it. I felt more connected. I know there's things in it, again, like when I think about with the first one, there's a lot of things I feel for me that doesn't make sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
But that's part of its charm, though, right? Like, that to me is part of this film's charm.
Very true. And I think maybe that's what it is. But again, that's why I was even saying I might be biased, because it was just kind of like, I've always liked it. Like, I've always just thought it was just great.
Okay. For me, yeah, I'm in the middle. I mean, I think my Letterboxd score suggests that I really don't enjoy this. I think if you take it straight on as a serious horror film, I don't think it's cutting the mustard, whereas it's just not quite campy enough to be that kind of fun, frothy thing. So the fact that it's right down the middle is what hurts it for me. Now, with that said, if somebody says, hey, do you want to throw on Urban Legends Final Cut? I'm not going to groan and be like, oh, that's a garbage movie. It's not going to be my first choice, but I would happily watch this again.
Question then, Joe. So which do you think is let's say a better movie, and which one do you think is a more entertaining movie? Is it this, or is it I Still Know What You Did Last Summer?
Oof.
Because both of them are much inferior sequels, in our opinion, to the first films.
I feel like I'm more frustrated, but I also get to make fun of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Whereas this, I think because it's playing it very straightforward in a lot of parts to me, I think this is probably the more enjoyable regular film. If I'm in the mood to like cackle, I'm probably going to put on I Still Know.
All right. That has been Urban Legends Final Cut. So before we announce what we're covering next week, if we announce what we're covering next week, Zena, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Yes. Okay, well, first, I'm always on Twitter.
What's your handle?
Lovely Zena. And I was going to change it because, when I don't know. But
No,
anyway, I got
no.
so stressed out and I was like, I'm just going to keep it. It's too late now.
Yeah, just keep it.
And then also I'm on Instagram as well as YouTube. And it's just Real Queen of Horror. And you can also find me at realqueenofhorror.com and Bloody Disgusting.
And also listen to the Bloody Disgusting podcast, because that's awesome.
Yes.
Also, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. This is actually, I was really nervous coming into this episode because I feel like I ingested so much urban legend this week that I was like, it's like, you want to do it justice? So I really appreciate having a fan of this movie, because again, it worked out where Joe was like, he hates it. I'm like in the middle and you're like a real fan. So we're all
I don't
good.
hate the movie. I just hate Amy.
No, Joe, you suck.
Yeah, when you expressed how you really felt about her, like that was just...
God, living jar of human mayonnaise.
No, nothing beats Amy looked confused.
See, and that's coming from, and I love the movie, but she looked confused.
So confused.
Anyway, well, if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at Horror Queers and join our Facebook Horror Queers group to hang out with other listeners. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on your podcatcher of choice. We have been getting a couple lately, but we can always use more. That's always lovely. If you want Horror Queers merchandise, please check out our store at TeePublic. Just search Horror Queers on teepublic.com. And if you want even more Horror Queers, support our show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. This month we have new episodes on Antebellum, starring Janelle Monáe, and Spiral, not from the Book of Saw. Joe, I know you're tired of that joke. But Spiral, a new queer horror film hitting Shudder this week, as well as an audio commentary on, shocker, as we've already mentioned, the first urban legend.
Wait, what?
That will, of course, pair with this very episode. But, Joe, tell everyone, what are we covering next week? Are you going to tell us?
I am not. So, for the first time in the history of the podcast, we're not going to be covering a horror film. It is a horrifying film, but it's not a horror film.
Debatable.
Yeah.
I will give this clue, and you can tell me if it's okay to say. Okay. I'll cut it out if you don't like it. It is mentioned as a horror film by somebody in a different horror film.
Yeah, that is vague enough that we can keep it in. So,
okay.
Folks, we are not going to cue you to this. You're just going to have to keep an eye out when the new episode drops next week, and hopefully you will enjoy it as much as we have been looking forward to it.
And we'll have a very fun guest on next week's episode as well.
Yes.
And on that note, we can cross out Urban Legends Final Cut.
Yes, and cross out Human Jar of Mayonnaise Amy and Horror Queers.
Bloody Disgusting Podcast Network, home of creepy, disturbing, and terrifying creepypastas, SCP archives, weekly full cast storytelling, horror queers, genre commentary from an LGBTQ perspective, and the Boo Crew. For horror-centric interviews, listen free wherever you stream audio and at bloodydisgusting.com/podcasts.
Hello, I'm Shelby Scott, the host of Scare You to Sleep, a podcast where I tell you spooky bedtime stories full of creepy sound effects and music that is soothing yet unsettling to help immerse you into a world of horror. This is a show for those of us who have realized horror can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Speaking of escapes, sometimes I lead you through guided nightmares, like a guided meditation, but instead of flowery meadows, I take you on a journey through your own personal nightmare. So come get lost in the terror with me. Listen to Scare You to Sleep wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm. Sweet screams.